My son looked me in the eye and said, "You're too ugly to sit at my wedding." He said it like he was doing me a favor. I scrubbed floors with bleeding knees, sold my wedding ring, and worked 48 hours straight, all so he could have a future. And now, I was nothing but a distraction. He kissed the top of my scarf like he was patting a tombstone and walked away. I opened the folder, bank statements, deeds, investments, over $1.3 million. He thought it was his. That day, I tore his name out of my will. As he smiled for the cameras, the lawyer handed him the envelope. His face drained, his hands shook, and across the vineyard our eyes met. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just walked away. My son looked me in the eye and told me I was too ugly to sit at his wedding. He said it like he was doing me a kindness, like sparing me from embarrassment. That was the day something in me went still. Not broken, not shattered, just still. Because when the person you carried inside your own body speaks to you like that, you realize the bond you thought could never snap has already been cut clean. Let me start with who I am. My name is Miriam Carter. I am 67 years old. I worked 35 years as a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital in Baltimore. Long shifts, double shifts, sometimes 2 days with barely a nap between. I held strangers' hands as they died. I scrubbed blood from my shoes before coming home so my son wouldn't have to smell it. I raised him on night shifts and cafeteria coffee. His name is Daniel. He was the only good thing I had after his father, Jerome, walked out when Daniel was 6. I told myself I'd be mother and father both. And for years, I was. I missed proms, yes. I missed little league games. But I paid every fee, bought every uniform, and made sure there was always food in the fridge even when I had none on my plate. When Daniel wanted a saxophone in 8th grade, I sold my wedding band to buy it. When he needed braces, I picked up extra shifts, 48 hours straight, nodding off in broom closets just to cover the bill. I kept count once. Over a decade, I paid more than $90,000 in private school tuition so he'd have a chance at the life I never touched. My coworkers said I was crazy. I said it was love. And maybe it was, or maybe it was worship. That's what it feels like now. Like I put my son on an altar and burned myself as the offering. Daniel grew tall, sharp, handsome. He studied finance, graduated, got a job at a firm downtown where everyone wears suits so tight they look shrink-wrapped. He met a woman named Olivia, thin and blonde with teeth so white they looked like they belonged in a commercial. She had the kind of laugh that made me feel like I was already being mocked even when she was only talking about salad dressing. Still, I tried. I invited her for dinner, made pot roast. Her plate stayed half full. She asked if I had gluten-free options. I nodded, though I didn't even know what gluten really was back then. I thought mothers were supposed to adapt. Months passed, and then one evening Daniel came over alone. He sat on the very edge of my couch, back stiff like he didn't want to sink into the cushions. He didn't touch the tea I'd set out, chamomile with honey, the kind he begged for during exam weeks in high school. He didn't touch the plate of oatmeal cookies either. He used to eat half the batch before they cooled. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Mom, about the wedding." I smiled. "Yes, do you need me to help with the rehearsal dinner? I can bake. I still have Aunt Clara's recipe cards." He didn't smile back. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "I think it's best if you don't come." At first I thought he meant the rehearsal, or maybe one of the smaller events. My hand stayed folded in my lap. "What do you mean?" He looked me dead in the face. "It's going to be very curated. Olivia wants a clean, modern aesthetic, minimalist, everything has to photograph well. He paused, searching for words. "You've been through a lot, the treatments, the scarf. You might make people uncomfortable." That word, uncomfortable. As if my wrinkles were an offense. As if my chemo-thinned hair, hidden under my scarf, would infect their perfect photos. As if my face, my tired mother's face, was something to hide like a stain on a tablecloth. I whispered, "You don't want me in your wedding pictures." He shifted, tugging at his sleeve. "It's not personal, it's just presentation." And then he said it, the words that stripped me bare. "You're too ugly for this kind of event, Mom. Please understand. We'll send you the pictures." I felt my throat close. My body went cold even though the radiator hummed. I thought of all those nights bent over charts, of scrubbing floors with aching knees so he could walk marble ones. I thought of my hands cracking in hospital sanitizer, of spoon-feeding him broth when he had the flu, of the way he clung to me after nightmares. And now my face, this same face that once kissed away his fevers, was not welcome at his new life. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just sat there, palms flat on my thighs to keep them from shaking. He stood, smoothed his tie, kissed the top of my scarf like he was patting a tombstone, and left. I watched his car pull away, and then I whispered, "Thank you, you've shown me everything I need to know." The next morning, I opened my locked drawer. Inside was a folder. Bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies. Over 40 years, I had quietly built more than anyone guessed. I never lived fancy. I drove a used Corolla, patched my winter coats, clipped coupons, but I invested every overtime check. A duplex in East Baltimore, a laundromat partnership, a small portfolio of bonds. It added up. More than $1.3 million, enough to change Daniel's life forever. Enough to give him the world I never had. He didn't know that was going to be my surprise, my legacy. After all the missed birthdays, after all the apologies, I thought at least I could leave him security. But now, no, he'd already buried me while I was breathing. I tore his name out of my will, called my lawyer, an old friend named Ruthie. She was shocked, but when I told her what Daniel said, she went silent. Then she asked, "Who will inherit then?" I already knew. The Elm Street Women's Shelter. A place where I once volunteered, where I'd served soup and folded laundry and listened to women tell stories about children who abandoned them, just like mine had. They had nothing. They had no one. They were me, if not for a thin line of luck. "That's where it all goes," I said. "Every cent, every brick." Ruthie hesitated. "Miriam, are you sure? This is your son." "No," I answered. "This is the man who told me I was too ugly to be seen. My son is gone." We rewrote everything. By nightfall, the ink was dry. My hand shook when I signed, but my heart was steady. 2 weeks later, the invitation came anyway. Thick cardstock with gold trim. The vineyard Olivia's family had rented looked like something out of a magazine. My name wasn't handwritten. It was printed, generic, like an afterthought. A seat in the family section, though Daniel had made it clear he didn't want me there. I sat at my kitchen table, holding that envelope. My first instinct was to throw it away, but then I thought, no, I would go, not to smile, not to clap. I would go to let him smile one last time, to let him think the world was his, and then I would show him the truth. I called Ruthie. We made a plan, a very clean, very legal plan, ironclad. She'd bring the envelope the day of the wedding, not to hand to me, to hand to him, in front of everyone. That night I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out an old photo album. Daniel as a baby, cheeks fat and eyes bright. Daniel in his high school uniform. Daniel at graduation, tassel hanging, me clapping from the back of the crowd because I couldn't leave my shift early. I ran my fingers over the photos, then closed the album. I whispered to the silence of the room, "You think I'm ugly? Fine, then you'll see what ugly truth feels like." And for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. The morning of the wedding, I rose before dawn. The house was silent. The sky outside my window carried that gray-blue light that comes before the sun decides whether it will show its face. I bathed slowly, my body aching in familiar places. My knees creaked, my wrists stiff from years of turning patients in hospital beds. I wrapped my head in a navy scarf embroidered with silver threads, a gift from my own mother decades ago. She told me once, "This will keep you strong." I didn't understand then. I do now. I chose my clothes carefully. A soft gray dress suit pressed the night before, comfortable shoes with low heels. No perfume, chemo had stolen my sense of smell, but I didn't want to sit there wondering if I was offending someone. I pinned on a small brooch, a hummingbird. Daniel had given it to me when he was 10, bought with allowance money and pride. I thought it fitting to wear it one last time in his presence. Ruthie arrived promptly at 9. She wore a navy blazer, her hair tied in a bun, glasses perched low on her nose. She carried her briefcase like a soldier carries a shield. Inside, sealed and notarized, was the envelope. The truth wrapped in paper and law. She didn't ask if I was sure. She knew. She just squeezed my shoulder as we drove out of the city toward the vineyard. The air smelled of spring rain. Fields stretched wide, green, and endless. The closer we came, the tighter my chest felt. The vineyard was a palace of curated beauty. White roses lined the entrance. Rows of grapevines stretched like soldiers standing at attention. Guests moved about in pastel dresses and pressed suits. A string quartet played something delicate near the archway. I stepped carefully, cane in hand, Ruthie steady beside me. Some guests looked our way and nodded politely, not recognizing me. To them, I was just another quiet old woman in a scarf. Invisible. Perfect. Exactly how Daniel wanted me. We were led to the family section. Third row from the front, aisle seat. I sat with my back straight, eyes forward. My pulse tapped against my scarf. I did not smile. The ceremony began. Daniel stood at the altar, handsome as a magazine ad, his tuxedo tailored sharp to his frame. He smiled easily, practiced, confident. Olivia appeared moments later in a fitted white gown. The crowd sighed. Cameras clicked. Applause rose like waves. I stayed still. The officiant spoke about unity, trust, and honoring those who had sacrificed to raise them. My chest tightened, waiting for Daniel to glance at me, just once at the mention of parents. He didn't. He looked only at Olivia. He held her hand like she was the only reason he had ever been born. They exchanged vows. His were polished, her eyes teared up at the right moments. They kissed. The audience erupted. Phones raised, flashes burst. The crowd stood to its feet, clapping and cheering. I did not stand, I did not clap, I watched. As the ceremony ended and the couple posed under the floral arch, Ruthie gave me a small nod. My time had come. She rose, briefcase in hand, and walked steadily toward them. The photographer paused, confused. Olivia frowned at Ruthie's approach. Daniel's smile faltered when he recognized her. "Congratulations," Ruthie said evenly, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "This is for you, from your mother." She handed him the thick manila envelope. Then, with calm precision, she handed Olivia a smaller one. And then she turned and walked back to me. I sat motionless, my cane against my knee, as Daniel tore open the envelope. At first he looked puzzled. Then his face drained of color. His hands shook as he flipped page after page. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed thin. Olivia, impatient, ripped hers open and pulled out a single handwritten letter. I couldn't hear her, but I didn't need to. I saw her face stiffen, saw her eyes widen, saw the anger rise like fire. Her mouth opened in shock, then twisted into disgust. She looked at Daniel as if he'd suddenly turned to ash. Whispers spread among the guests. Phones tilted, recording. The pianist stopped mid-song. The laughter died down into a hush. Daniel looked up, eyes frantic, searching the crowd. He found me, our eyes locked across the vineyard. His mouth opened like he wanted to shout. I gave him nothing. No smile, no nod, just silence. Then I stood slowly, using my cane, and walked toward the path that led back to the parking lot. My shoes pressed into the gravel, crunching steady. Behind me, I could hear Olivia's sharp voice, Daniel's panicked pleading, the guests murmuring, the rustle of confusion spreading like a storm. But I did not turn back. I left a folded scarf on my chair, navy with silver threads neatly placed. My marker, my absence written in fabric. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, the street lamp glowing outside, and I imagined it all. Daniel flipping through the documents, realizing every property, every account, every share, every cent was gone from his grasp. Realizing it all now belonged to women he would never meet in a shelter he never cared about. Realizing his mother, the woman he'd dismissed as too ugly, was the only reason he had ever had a chance at this life, and that she had taken it all back with the stroke of a pen. I imagined Olivia reading her letter, seeing my handwriting, the line that told her plainly. If you married Daniel for money, you will have to find it elsewhere. He has none now. He earned that. I imagined her face turning cold, her hand yanking away from his, her voice slicing through his pride. The guests watching, the photos ruined, the curated aesthetic destroyed by the truth. And I smiled, faint but real. Because I didn't need to see his tears. I didn't need to watch the collapse. I knew it would come, just as surely as morning follows night. Let him smile for the camera. Let him enjoy the applause, because everything after it belonged to me. In the days that followed, word spread fast. My absence at the reception became a story. Someone had filmed the moment Daniel opened the envelope. Someone else caught Olivia storming off, bouquet thrown to the ground, her bridesmaids chasing after her. The clip circulated, quietly at first, then wider. Whispers turned to headlines. Mother disinherits son at wedding. Ugly truth behind the vineyard ceremony. My name was not always mentioned, but it didn't matter. The story carried weight. Daniel tried to call me 6 times in 2 days. I didn't answer. He showed up at my house once, pounded the door until my neighbor threatened to call the police. I sat inside, lights off, sipping my tea, listening to his shouts through the wood. "Mom, open the door, we can fix this, please." I didn't move, I didn't even breathe loud. Finally, his voice cracked and he left. Ruthie called me later. He's rattled, tried to demand we undo the will, he even threatened to sue, but it's airtight, not a crack in it. I closed my eyes, whispered, "Good." For the first time in years, I felt no fear, no debt, no begging for respect. The chain was broken. Yet even in victory, I sat with the weight of grief. I thought about that boy who once brought me dandelions in his fists, who once fell asleep on my chest after nightmares. Where did he go? When did he become this man who could look at me and call me ugly, disposable, unworthy? The answer came quietly. He had been raised in a world that rewarded polish and punished scars. And maybe I was guilty too. I gave him everything but the one thing he needed most, a backbone built from gratitude. I gave him gifts but didn't teach him sacrifice. I gave him a stage but forgot to teach him humility. That was my sin. But sins can be paid for, and I had just paid mine in full. That night I burned the last box of keepsakes I had written for him. Letters for birthdays, for milestones, for the future I thought we'd share. One by one, the flames ate them. My living room filled with the smell of paper and ink and ash. My eyes watered, but not from sorrow, from release. When the last page curled into smoke, I whispered to the fire, "You are free now, and so am I." 2 days after the wedding, the bills began to arrive where the applause had ended. Olivia's planner sent a final reconciliation. 42 pages, glossy, with line items neat as stitches. Vineyard site fee, $18,000. Catering, $27,300. String quartet, $2,400. Florals, $11,750. Lighting and staging, $6,200. Custom tux, $1,850. Photographer and video, $9,600. Security, valet, portable restrooms, heaters, tips, another $8,000 and change. Total due after deposits, $38,457.12. Payment within 10 days to avoid penalties. I know because Ruthie forwarded me the email. Not to gloat, to document. When people behave like Daniel did, you keep a paper trail and you keep it safe. He had planned this event like he planned his life, with the assumption that I would pay the invisible bill. He had counted on money he'd never earned. He had spent a future that wasn't his. When the envelope took that future away, the numbers stayed. Numbers always do. By day 3, his firm's compliance officer had questions. Someone in the office had seen the videos. The partners don't like scandal. Finance is a business of image and confidence. If either cracks, the floor opens. He was called into a conference room with glass walls that made private humiliation look like a museum exhibit. He told Ruthie later he felt ambushed. That was the word he used. I didn't respond. Sometimes the truth is an ambush when you've been lying to yourself. By day 4, Olivia returned the ring. Not with drama, with a courier. The box weighed almost nothing. They say diamonds are forever. They aren't. They're just cold. I didn't answer Daniel's calls. I didn't answer the door. I made my tea and sorted my pills and watered the spider plant in the kitchen window. Peace can be very ordinary if you let it. Ruthie filed the last pieces of paper to close any cracks. A transfer on death form for the bond accounts. A recorded deed placing both rental homes into the Elm Street Shelter Trust. A formal assignment of my 30% share in the laundromat partnership to the same trust, with new operating papers signed and notarized. A no-contest clause in the will with teeth. If Daniel challenged and lost, he'd be liable for legal fees. We sent copies to his firm's counsel when he threatened to bring this to court. They read it. Then they wrote back one sentence. We advise Mr. Carter against litigation. I slept. A week passed, my phone rang less. The street was quiet again. The world had found new stories to feed on. That is how it goes. Then, one gray afternoon, someone knocked. Not pounding, not begging, 3 gentle taps. I opened the door and found Pastor James from New Hope Mission standing on my steps with his battered leather Bible. He smelled like winter air and peppermint. He'd baptized Daniel when he was 8 in water so cold the boy squealed and laughed and clung to my neck. The memory made my throat ache. "I won't come in if you don't want me to," he said. "I'll talk to you right here on the stoop." "Come in," I said. "Tea." He shook his head and stayed standing, hat in his hands. "I won't speak for him. I won't make excuses. He's asked me to ask you to hear him. I told him I don't deliver messages. I only deliver truth. The truth is he has been a fool. The truth is you don't owe him a minute of your breath. The truth is also that repentance doesn't need an audience. It needs change." "Pastor," I said, "I am not angry. Anger is hot. What I feel is clean." He nodded. "Then be clean and be free." He left without another word. I stood at the window long after he'd gone and watched his coat disappear around the corner. Sometimes the holiest people are the ones who don't push your heart. They leave it alone and let God do his work. The next day Ruthie called. "They've renamed the shelter building," she said. "They want to call it the Carter home. Do you want that?" "No," I said. "Call it the Hummingbird, the small thing that moves fast and refuses to die." She laughed soft. "The Hummingbird it is." We began the work. Work is how you build dignity when people try to take it. The 2 rentals needed new roofs, $42,000 for both. The laundromat's dryers were chewing quarters, new belts, clean vents, 2 replacements at $2,300 apiece. We approved the repairs. The trust paid. I kept records in a green notebook with tabs and dates and staples lined up like soldiers. When the first rent checks posted to the trust account, $1, $450 from the upstairs unit, $1,350 from the downstairs, I took the bus to Elm Street with a bag of fresh socks and travel-sized toiletries. The director, a steady woman named V, hugged me like I was already family. "You changed everything," she whispered in my ear. "We won't waste it." I believe her. I walked the halls. The rooms were clean and bright, but you could see the need tucked into corners, the scuffed baseboards, the cabinet hinges loose, the playroom bookshelf missing a back board. Nothing dramatic. Just the details that say, we have been surviving. In the clinic room, I found a girl in a paper gown on an exam table, knees drawn to her chest. She couldn't have been more than 19. The nurse was running late. The girl stared at the floor like she wanted to fall through it. "I'm Miriam," I said. "I used to be a nurse. Do you want me to sit?" She nodded. I sat. We said nothing for a while. Quiet can be a blanket if you don't tug at it. When she finally looked up, her left eye was purple and yellow where someone had taught her a lesson with a fist. I didn't ask who. I just held her hand until the nurse came. Then I stood in the doorway and watched kindness do what medicine sometimes can't. I started coming every Tuesday. I restocked bandages. I labeled bins. I taught the night staff a simple way to turn a patient without wrecking your back, shift weight to the hip, count together, breathe. I kept the clinic keys on a lanyard and wore my hummingbird pin. I didn't use my title. I didn't need to be Nurse Carter to be useful. I could just be Miriam. On the 3rd Tuesday, a little boy drew a picture in broken crayon lines. A blue square with a door and 2 windows and a flower that looked like an exploding sun. He wrote MIRI on the roof because he ran out of space for the rest. He handed it to me like it was a check that would never bounce. I put it on my fridge. I look at it when the house gets too quiet. 2 months in, the doctor said the word remission, and my lungs didn't know whether to cheer or hold their breath. I walked home slow in good winter light and sat on the edge of my bed with my shoes still on. I didn't tell Daniel. He had used my illness as an aesthetic, a reason to hide me. He didn't deserve to share in the miracle that made me new. He tried one last time. He mailed a letter, not an apology, a negotiation. "Mom, what if we set up a trust with conditions? What if I volunteer? What if you reconsider?" He used the language of contracts like he was buying back a soul. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and slid it into a drawer for evidence. Then I wrote back one sentence: "Love is not an installment plan." I signed my name and nothing else. Then I called Ruthie and set up one more thing. A scholarship from the Hummingbird Trust, $5,000 a year for a woman from the shelter who wanted to train as a CNA, then as an LPN, then, if she could stand the years, as an RN. Applications 1 page, no essays, no trauma theater. Just proof of classes and a recommendation from V. I named it after my mother, the one who bought the navy scarf with the silver thread. Anna Mee's Hand Scholarship. Because a steady hand is the first mercy a patient meets. We announced it in the dining room on a Wednesday evening with spaghetti and garlic bread scenting the air. The women clapped. Some cried. V squeezed my fingers so hard I had half moons from her nails. The first award went to the 19-year-old with the healing eye. Her name was Sky. She wore braids and a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and shoes she'd rescued from a church basement. She promised to come back to Elm Street when she'd earned her license. I believed her. She had the patient eyes of a person who has already seen the bottom and chosen the ladder. The laundromat did better under new management. We posted a bright sign, "Wash Wednesdays, shelter families free 6-9 p.m." The owner of the bodega next door started handing out discounted detergent. 2 churches sent volunteers. Strangers brought quarters in Ziploc bags. People can be terrible. People can also be enough. As for Daniel, he moved apartments. The fancy one near the harbor was a performance he could no longer afford. He went somewhere cheaper, farther from glass lobbies and valet stands. He kept his job but lost his team. They moved his desk. He told Ruthie he could feel the hum around his name like a power line ready to snap. Consequences hum, that is their sound. One afternoon in early spring, I saw him across the street when I was taking out my trash. He didn't cross. He stood with his hands in his pockets like a boy waiting to be picked up after practice. I could have waved. I didn't. Instead, I lifted the lid, let the bag fall, and went back inside. Some doors stay shut not out of hate, but out of health. There are people who will say a mother should always make room. They have not had their faces called ugly by the mouths they taught to speak. They have not been erased in the name of a curated life. Forgiveness is holy. It is also mine to give or not, on a timetable that answers to no one but God. Summer came, heat pressed against the city like a palm. The grapevines at the vineyard surely swelled again without me or my silence. That is fine. Some places are meant to flourish without you. I took the bus to the water on Sundays and sat with a paper container of fries and a bottle of cold ginger ale. I watched fathers throw balls to their children. I watched couples squint into the sun. Sometimes the light made me wince. Mostly it made me warm. I have learned that warmth is something you can build without a single hand laid on you if you are patient and honest. In August, V asked me to speak at a fundraiser. I said I would only tell the truth plain and not with violins. She said that was exactly why she had asked. I stood at a plain lectern in a church basement and looked out at faces that wanted to help. I told them a short story. My son told me I was too ugly for his wedding. I let him smile one last time. Then I took back everything I had built with these hands, by the law, with witnesses, with a steady pen. I gave it to women the world doesn't see. This is not revenge. This is correction. When something is bent, you can beat it or you can bend it back. We are bending things back here. If you want to help, buy socks, fix a hinge, pay for textbooks. Don't come to be a savior. Come to be a neighbor. They gave more than we asked. Not because I cried. I did not. Because I told the truth in short sentences and looked them in the eye. On my 68th birthday, Sky passed her CNA exam. She brought me a cupcake with too much frosting and told me she had shadowed on the oncology floor and that the smell didn't frighten her anymore. I laughed. If you can eat hospital soup without complaint, you can survive anything. She hugged me carefully, like I was a library book she didn't want to crease. I hugged her back like a woman who had enough to share. That night I took out my green notebook and added a tab, Legacy. Not for a monument, for instructions. I wrote down account numbers and passwords, who to call, how to transfer the next tranche of bonds to the trust without tax penalties, how to keep the laundromat's maintenance schedule from slipping, who at the city licensing office answers their phone, what to do if the old oak by the back fence drops a limb on the roof. Legacy is not a statue. It is a list someone else can follow without guessing. Some evenings, when the day has been full in the best, quiet ways, I sit with my tea and look at the hummingbird pin on the table. I think of the navy scarf with silver thread folded on that wedding chair. I left it there on purpose. People still argue online about what it meant. Let them. Symbols are best when they do their work without you speaking for them. And sometimes, not often, I remember a small moment from the past so clear it feels like a film clip I can hold to the light. Daniel is 5. He is in pajamas with rockets on them. He climbs into my lap while I am still in my scrubs and smells like sleep and cereal and crayons. He touches my face with sticky fingers and says, "Mommy, you're pretty." I do not cry when I see that memory. I do not beg it to stay. I let it visit and then I let it leave. It is a true thing that lived and did its work. That is enough. You might ask if I would change anything. I would not. If people need a moral at the end of their stories, here is mine, written without lace. Do not confuse a mother's love with your right to her sacrifice. Do not spend money you have not earned because you assume the woman who raised you will pay the invoice with her bones. Do not call a face ugly that kissed you into life and expect to keep the light of it. I did not teach my son those lessons when he was young, so I taught him when he was grown in a language he understands. Paper, signatures, locks that click, doors that do not open. Let him smile in the pictures. Let him frame them and show them to people who don't know the story. The camera caught one moment. I kept the rest. The bills, the deeds, the scholarships, the Tuesday clinic, the boys drawing on my fridge, Sky's new badge, the laundromat's hum on Wash Wednesdays. That is the film that plays in my house now. It is not curated. It is not minimalist. It is not arranged to please a stranger's eye. It breathes. I am not resting in peace. I am living in it. And if there is justice in the world, and there is, slow and stubborn, then every woman who is told to stay home because her face would ruin the view will have a day when she writes a check, signs a deed, approves a scholarship, unlocks a clinic, fixes a hinge, and says in a voice that does not tremble, "This is mine. I am giving it to those who never tried to erase me." My son is alive, so am I. He has silence. I have Tuesday mornings and socks folded into pairs and a green notebook under my hand. He once said I was too ugly for his wedding. The truth is, I was too real for his photograph. He wanted a picture. I built a place. That is the last word.